Amazing. Good morning, Wally. How
Good
are you?
morning. How are you?
Good. Where are you in Melbourne at the moment?
Yes, we live in Melbourne.
Oh, wow, what a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. No complaints.
Probably a bit warmer than here, that's for sure.
I've got friends who are going over to Lake Hawea, and
Yeah.
it's -2 down there. So you've got it
Holy.
really hot up there.
Yeah, it's a lot warmer up in where we are than down there, but still not compared to Australia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Beautiful Split Enz poster behind you as well. Is it a Split Enz one? Yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah. That's the Where are you? What can you see? Yeah, that's the original before the name change.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Look at that. There you are, top right.
yeah.
You look at it, that's beautiful. It's awesome. So yeah, I've got a few students with me this morning that have prepared some questions. We got
Good.
Aniwa here. Make sure you guys can introduce yourselves.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Aniwa.
Anyway, pleased to meet you.
Hi, my name is Ellen.
Alan, pleased to meet you too.
And my name's Yasmin.
And Jasmine.
Yasmin.
Yasmin, okay.
That's another team. Awesome. So they've prepared a few questions. I'll let them go through. I'll try not to um interrupt and just let them do their thing. But thank you so much for your time. And then after I'll take you for a little walk to show you just next door to show you our big mural we've painted.
Okay, yeah, I look forward to it.
Awesome. All right, I'll move out of the way slightly and you guys can start your questions.
You were part of the Split Enz in the early days. How did you first connect with the band?
Well, we all went to the same school. So I was playing with the Mike Chun, the bass player, and Eddie Rayner in bands long before Split Enz came along. So we started playing together when we were probably 14 to 15. And so we started to play. And then later on, because we were all schoolmates, we got together and that was what Split Enz was. It was a lot of people from the same school, except for Phil and a few others. Yes. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
What was the creative energy like during those early rehearsals and performances?
What was the creative?
Energy like during those early rehearsals?
Oh, well, just wonderful. Like we used to practice in a front lounge room at the bass player Mike Chun's parents' place. And it was a highly creative space. We used to play almost acoustically with an acoustic piano, and we were free to do whatever we wanted to do within the music. So it was very unstructured compared to a normal band. We didn't have chord structures written down. We didn't even talk about keys for music or anything else. We just played. And that's how we created that workspace. So it was a very, very creative space where people used to drop in from time to time and talk to us about things, and then we'd prepare and do a concert. And that was those early days. Yes, Yasmin.
The Enz was known for its unique style and flair. How did you feel about the visual and artistic direction at the time?
Loved it. It was mainly theatre. So when we put on shows in the early days, we would practice for 3 or 4 months, and then we'd do a performance. And normally those performances were not done ever the same way again. We put on shows like a Christmas Pandemonium, where it was a theatre production effectively with an intermission, and we had dancing girls on the stage. We had the stage covered in sand. We did a whole lot of different things. So we thought of ourselves as being equally theatrical as much as musical. Yes.
What are your memories of recording the first demos or performing live with the band?
Okay, well, the first music that we recorded was actually recorded at Stebbings, which is a very small studio in Auckland. And we recorded several songs that were not part of Mental Notes at that studio. And of course, in those days, studio work was very different. You'd turn up and you'd be given 2 or 3 hours to record a song or a couple of songs, and you got into the main recording room and you just play and sing, and it was recorded, and that was as simple as it got. By the time we got to Mental Notes, which we recorded in Sydney, things had changed somewhat, and so what we did is we divided it up, and I had 3 days in the studio alone to do guitar parts, and then the bass player came in and did his parts, and then that was conglomerated into those songs. So it was a different recording process, and probably not as friendly as what it would have been had we all been in the room at the same time. So it's a little bit different. But playing live is a different experience again, because you're in front of an audience, and so you're really charged with trying to entertain as much as play your music. So you have to look at the audience and understand what they're experiencing, and make sure that your set list, your list of songs, is going to cater for that audience. You have a kind of a surprising opening, if you like, and a good middle part, and then a large ending at the end. And that's all part of that performance. So live performance compared to studio performance is a very, very different thing.
How would you describe your musical influences, and how did they shape your guitar work and Split?
Oh, very good question. Really good question. My musical influences were obviously the Beatles were the biggest influence by a mile. But because I played guitar, I was also heavily influenced by people like Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix, who were very big in the 60s, and that's when I started to play when I was very young. And they did influence me. Eric Clapton probably in those days a little bit more than anyone else. Before Split Enz, I used to play covers of early Hendrix and Clapton songs, so I liked the guitar playing. But of course, Split Enz was a different type of focus, where it wasn't a guitar band per se, and it didn't play structured blues or anything else that was normal in those days. So the playing by nature had to change, and so therefore, and also because a lot of the songs were done on with guitars in very strange tunings, it was very hard to find good chords to play in those songs. So although those people influenced me, like Clapton and Hendrix and others, ultimately I had to carve out my own way in the band. So it was a different sound again.
Looking back, how do you feel about the evolution of Split Enz after your departure?
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I thought when Neil joined the band, it was just a breath of fresh air, and they became a very strong commercial band, and they recorded some amazing music, which was easier for the consumer to listen to. If you think of their early hits with, I Got You and History Never Repeats and all those wonderful songs, that would not have occurred had I still been in the band. Neil came in and produced something that was very, very unique, and that was a great thing. That was a wonderful thing. So yeah, I really enjoyed the band even after I left. But it took a couple of years for them to find their feet. But as I said, with the arrival of Neil, I think the whole emphasis changed. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite song or moment from your time with the band that stands out?
For me, with the music that I played, I like Spellbound. That would be my favorite song, because it was also extremely simple. In concept, it's only a couple of chords, but it's very catchy. And I think that captured what Phil was able to create as a bass. And of course, then we would come in and we'd add all our own parts. So the music came in its raw form on an acoustic guitar, and then we added bits to it. So from my point of view, my favorite song that I was involved in would have been by far, I think, Spellbound, and then followed by Stranger Than Fiction and Time for a Change, those three. Outside of that, I think Enz had so many good songs after I left that very hard to name that one that sticks out in my head as being better than any other song. Yeah.
Have you stayed in touch with any of the members over the years?
Yes, I have. I've stayed in contact with Phil, who lives in Melbourne, up in Eltham, and we catch up reasonably frequently. I emailed him last week. I FaceTimed with Mike Chun a few days ago, and I keep in very regular communication with Eddie as well. So those three I keep in very, very close contact with. When I go to New Zealand, I also try and catch up with Paul Crowther, the drummer. So that's that kind of we keep in fairly regular contact.
If you had the chance to jam with the Enz again today, what song would you most want to play?
Probably Spellbound again. Probably that. I think it's a great little short number. That would be the song I'd pick.
What was the New Zealand music scene like at the time, and how did Split Enz fit into it?
Oh, okay. That's a really good question too. The simple answer is we didn't fit in. The music scene at the time, especially in Auckland, there were a few nightclubs, Tabblers and the Bo Peep, and they were very late. They used to open at 10:30 or 11 at night, and they go through till about 7 in the morning. So they were late night venues, and the groups that played there were extremely different to Split Enz, extremely different. So we didn't fit into that club scene at all. And in fact, the first early gigs that we did, it was really hard for people to work out what we were doing because they found the music very hard to dance to. So we were fairly unique in that way. So really we became a touring concert type band very early on. We didn't do a club circuit like most bands were doing at that stage.
How did you approach your guitar sound and style within such an experimental group?
This is a good question too. It was extremely difficult, to be honest. In a lot of the early playing before Eddie got into synthesizers, I played a lot of parts using a volume pedal, which made the guitar sound like a cello or a violin. So a lot of orchestrated pieces were played on guitar. So sound-wise, it was very different to what I'd used before. Before Split Enz, I'd use a wah-wah pedal and a distortion unit, and I was very comfortable in that arena. But with Split Enz, the sound became a little bit more pure and a bit more guided to the music. So you'd have you'd think of an arrangement where strings would work really well, but because you didn't have violins and cellos, you'd make that sound on the guitar. So there was a lot of kind of audio sounds that I was going for rather than musical notes, if that makes sense. Yeah? Okay.
Was there a particular show or gig that really captured the essence of the band's energy for you?
Yes. The best gig I think we ever did was in a hotel in Melbourne, where it was a very crowded room and we had to set up and play on tabletops. There was no stage. So they put all these tables together and we stood on top of them. And the audience was about that far from us. They were right next to us and it was extremely crowded. And I think we played the best we'd ever played in that very hot, compact environment rather than playing in, say, a town hall or anything else. So the smaller venues. There was another venue in Melbourne called the Hard Rock Cafe, and we played there several times. And the only way to get onto the stage was you had to crawl through a window on the outside of the building to get onto the stage. So that was a real challenge. So we had some fun times. We also played in corridors and universities. You never quite knew what to expect. So you just had to be flexible.
What do you think made Split Enz stand out? Was it the music, the costumes, the personalities, or a mix of everything?
Yeah, I think in the earlier days, because it was very hard to categorize what the band was, that gave it some appeal, some novel appeal. So people said, well, we don't know whether we like them or hate them, but gee, they're different. But as time grew, and it didn't take long, the theatrical side slowly started to wane off a bit as the music started to take dominance. So you had that period of time from, say, 76 to 78 where the music started to take over, and the need to entertain like a theatrical group had disappeared pretty much, and then it became just great music. So the early days, though, I think people were very interested in seeking out things that appealed to them. So you're talking about a very early time, 50 years ago. We didn't have iPhones, we didn't have all these other things. So live music was pretty important, especially if you were a teenager growing up. So we did get a pretty strong following very quickly on.
What advice would you give to young musicians trying to find their voice in a band today?
First of all, you have to love what you do. If you're doing it just to become famous, it will never work. You've got to really love what you do, so you practice and you play with people, and if you remain enthusiastic and you know where you're heading, then chances are you'll get there. But it takes work, it takes, and it's not so much hard work, it's just you've got to love it. It's like you girls, if you've got sport or you've got music or something else, if you really enjoy doing it, even if you don't have to do it, well, then you know you're on to something that you're going to take with you for the rest of your life.
If you could go back in time to those early Enz days, is there anything you'd do differently?
Look, I don't think there is. I think that as it's all occurred over time, I think it's been great. Obviously, you could go back and say, well, we could have done this or we should have done that. But overall, I think what we did and what we created and how we went about it was probably the best that could have been done for those times.
What does it feel like to know you were part of the origin story of one of New Zealand's most iconic bands?
Well, I'm very pleased. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you ladies, would I? So it's a lovely honour to have been part of that, and it's great that that a lot of the band members still talk to each other all the time. It just shows there's a bond there that's very hard to break. Pride is probably a little bit of a strong word, but I'm very happy to have been associated with the band and to be part of New Zealand's history.
How do you describe the music you would typically create during Split Enz?
Difficult because you couldn't put it into a category like jazz or rock or pop or blues or anything else. It was just it was free-form creative music. Very, very hard. It's a good question, but it's very, very hard to work out the early music, how you'd categorize it. As Neil got involved and as they were writing more commercial songs, well, that became different. They became like a pop band. But the Mental Notes era and prior to Mental Notes, it was a mix of kind of electrified country music in a funny way, but very, very hard to put into one category.
If you could collaborate with any artist, who would it be and why?
Good question. Look, I think I'd probably like to do something with Eddie, the keyboard player, because he and I get on really, really well. And also very strong connection to Mike Chun, who he played with me from the age of about 16. So I would probably seek them out compared to playing with anyone else on the planet. I think I'd probably prefer to do something with them as we know each other really well. And so you don't have to kind of worry about getting to know someone and what their idiosyncrasies are. We would just get together and play. So I would probably choose Eddie.
How do you define success?
How did I find it?
How do you define success?
Define success, achieving what you want to achieve. That's the best answer I can give.
Do you have a message to Hamilton East students who have been studying mental notes?
Well, I'm just so pleased that you're having a look at the album. It's full of fascinating bits and pieces that you'll no doubt dig into, and hopefully with Lockie's help, you'll understand bits of what we were trying to achieve. You've got to remember the recording process was very short. I'm just so pleased that you students are doing this. I think it's just wonderful. And I saw a photo of the mural, which Lockie's going to show me in a while. But I think it's just wonderful, and it is part of New Zealand's history. Your parents and grandparents would probably be your grandparents are probably more familiar with the music. And it is a great thing to study. I think it's an album worth studying, to be honest, whether I was involved in it or not. I think there's some interesting musical excerpts for that time, 1975, that are worthwhile studying. So well done to you people. I hope it's not driving you nuts.
But thank you so much for your time. I'll just jump in while they're doing it. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll show you the mural in a second, but yeah, I mean, it's an amazing album, an amazing piece. And I mean, would you guys have imagined 50 years ago that students would still be studying it now? Like it's
No,
splitting.
and I think it's wonderful what you've done, because Lockie, it is a challenging album. Like it's not one that you put on and you say, I can dance to this, or these are my favorite. You know what I mean? It's not one of those albums. It's an acquired taste. So I think it's wonderful that you're having a look at it.
Yeah.
The process of recording wasn't as good as what we were in a lot of ways live. The engineer who recorded it hated the music.
Yeah.
So we were up against a lot of things in the studio to try and get what we wanted to get out of it in a very short space of time on a very limited budget.
Yeah.
But for those people who were fortunate enough in the early days to catch a theatre concert, then they would have seen the band as we would like to be remembered.
Yeah. No, it's always been my favorite album. I remember my granddad showing it to me when I was a kid, and when I was probably these guys' age or younger, I used to draw it. I used to go to his house and study the record and try to draw it all the time. And it's been an honor for me as well to be here. And just on that, I wanted to ask, just came to me now, what was it like when you first saw Phil's painting of the album cover? How did that sort of reveal happen? Or
well, we were practicing down in an old A-frame behind where Tim and Phil were flatting, and Phil was painting the cover in his bedroom.
Yeah.
So as we turned up to practice, we'd all wander in from time to time, and he'd have paintbrushes there doing. So we saw it being painted, and as it evolved into the final cover, and then of course the history. Do you remember it got smashed with lightning? Yeah.
Okay.
So there is some footage. There's this one here. Let me just see if I can do this. Can you see that there?
Oh, yeah.
That's the original cover before it was damaged.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there was some pictures of it before it got damaged.
Yes, there was some pictures taken, and so that's the original, and they're the shots, and that's when those little photos. I can't see what I'm showing you, but the photos up the top there are the ones that Phil shot with a little instant camera in Sydney, and that's when everybody decided to change their name.
Oh, wow. So why was the picture of the album cover not used opposed to the correct one? Was it just...
Lockie, I have no idea.
It just seems strange that if there were already ones without it correct, they'd,
Yeah. There was a big panic at the time, and when we were told, then Phil had to paint more cracks in it and do all this to make it look like it was deliberate.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why that one wasn't used, to be honest. But it was that exact same time that Brian became Tim and Tony became Eddie. So everybody changed their name. Yeah. I was already Wally, so I didn't change.
Yeah. And do you hear from Tim at all really now, or not really? Is he sort of...
I don't hear from Tim, and most of the guys don't really hear a lot from Tim.
Yeah.
I haven't really been much in contact with Tim over the last 50 years, to be honest. It's mainly Eddie and Crowther and Chun. Because we were playing a long time before Enz.
Yeah.
Like, I played bass with Eddie and Crowther and what was his name? Alistair Riddell in a band. So we were doing all these kind of gigs and playing in different bands long before Enz. So there's a logical reason why we would still keep in contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got Mike coming on the day. We've got a Split Enz Day on the 17th with the 7 Sharp, our local sort of TV show coming.